Welcome back to International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the record saying the dollars, and check this out. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Anything you post on social media can and will be used against you in a court of law. And remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Let's check this out, man. Take heed, pay attention to what's going on. Learn from the mistakes of others. Let's check this out. Cedric Dorsey II. I'm so pimpish. Man beat on sex trafficking victim's face to keep her in line while bragging about his ill-gotten gains on social media. Remember, anything you say, anything you post can and will be used against you. A lot of y'all think this is a game or this is a joke. Trafficking / human trafficking is not a joke. Once again, if they find you guilty of human trafficking / trafficking, by using the elements of force, fraud, coercion, violence, and or threats of violence, they'll throw you away. They will throw you away. They can give you a sentence up to life in prison.
Wow.
All right, let's get off into this story. Here we go. A Washington State man who once boasted on social media about his illicit gains will now spend the next several decades behind bars. He was found guilty of sex trafficking. He'll now spend the next several decades behind bars. It's not a game, y'all. Let's go. Cedric Dorsey II, 32, was recently convicted of numerous charges, including human trafficking in the 2nd degree, promoting prostitution in the 1st degree, and unlawful possession of a firearm. He was sentenced this week to 35 years in prison. 32-year-old Cedric Dorsey II was sentenced to 35 years in state prison. Prior to his arrest, the defendant posted at least one image of himself posing with a long gun. In one post, Dorsey claimed, "I'm so pimpish." It's the photo they speaking of where he's sitting there with the chop on his lap. Police later used his social media presence against him. I'm gonna repeat that. Police later used his social media presence against him. I'm so happy to take what they post included in the scope of our investigation, Bellevue Police Department Major Ellen Inman told Seattle-based news. That's the way I look at social media and the way the people advertise their criminal activity. If you advertise it and make it available for us to use in our investigation, then that's what we'll do. So if you posting guns on social media and you know you shouldn't have guns, or you were a fella in possession of the gun, then maybe that's something you shouldn't do. You posting illegal drugs, you're bragging about illegal activities, and you're putting it on social media, maybe that's something that you should not do. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. Anything you post on social media platforms can and will be used against you in an investigation and or the court of law. Pay attention. You don't think it can happen, it just happened. It's been happening. Take heed, don't throw your life away. Let's continue. Let's check out what the news had to say about this story. They covered a story on this. Okay, here we go. Check it out.
Yeah, Molly and Preston, Bellevue police say this all started out as a routine patrol call where a couple of officers thought something didn't quite look right. That led to prosecutors saying they were able to take down a vicious pimp who was abusing a woman and selling her for sex work while keeping the money for himself.
So trying to tell me leave alone?
On social media,
It's trying to tell me leave money alone.
Cedric Dorsey painted himself as a pimp
Why I'm a pimp?
with money, swagger, and influence.
SCCC 333.
But investigators say his lifestyle was built by forced sex.
I need y'all to really take heed and learn from the mistakes of others. You see this right here, Cash Chasing said. They gave this man 35 years in prison for trafficking, for human trafficking, for bragging and boasting on the internet, the things he was involved in. The police, in turn, used that bragging and boasting against him in court. And in turn, they gave him 35 years after being found guilty. Excuse me. We're going to take this from the top. Take heed, learn from the mistakes of others. And remember that everything is not for everybody. Find something legal to do. Let's go.
Yeah, Molly and Preston, Bellevue police say this all started out as a routine patrol call where a couple of officers thought something didn't quite look right. That led to prosecutors saying they were able to take down a vicious pimp who was abusing a woman and selling her for sex work while keeping the money for himself.
So trying to tell me leave alone?
On social media,
It's trying to tell me leave money alone.
Cedric Dorsey painted himself as a pimp
Why I'm a pimp?
with money, swagger, and influence.
SCCC 333.
But investigators say his lifestyle was built by forced sex work as Dorsey trafficked a woman into prostitution in Seattle, Bellevue.
Y'all pay attention? Y'all listening? They said his life was built off of forced work. Not that he had an adult consensual sex worker. They said it was forced. Remember the elements: force, fraud, coercion, violence, and or the threats of violence. Found guilty of any of those, you can receive up to life in prison. There's some real news you can use. If found guilty of force, fraud, coercion, violence, and or the threats of violence, you can receive up to life in prison. Let's go.
Himself as a pimp
Why I'm a pimp?
with money, swagger, and influence.
SCCC 333.
But investigators say his lifestyle was built by forced sex work as Dorsey trafficked a woman into prostitution in Seattle, Bellevue, Kent, and Las Vegas. It all came undone in 2024 when Bellevue police responded to a domestic violence call involving Dorsey and his victim.
They listened to what that victim was telling them and realized things were just adding up for her and what she was saying, and that she was in a very dangerous situation.
Bellevue Police Major Ellen Inman says patrol officers noticed signs of trafficking and called detectives.
When you ask them questions, they're answering repeatedly in these kind of scripted or answers that sound like they're rehearsed. When they served the search warrant on his premise, they recovered $12,000 in cash, along with those 3 firearms, one of which was stolen, and a banned firearm.
King County prosecutors hit Dorsey with charges of human trafficking, promoting prostitution, and unlawful possession of a firearm.
We see very significant violence, strangulation, beatings, assaults.
Prosecutor Brayla McGinnis tried Dorsey's case where his own social media posts were used as evidence, including this one about the 304 oath, where prostitutes promise not to cooperate with police and say they aren't victims.
One of the biggest rules of the game is not to talk to police. It is that idea of selling the dream, right? Saying, I have these nice things. If you come with me, you can have all of this, right? And when you're talking to someone who has had a very rough upbringing or a very troubled life, that's the vulnerability that they exploit.
That's the way I look at social media and the use of different ways that people advertise their criminal activity, is that if you make it available for the Bellevue Police Department in this case to access and use as part of our lawful investigation, then that's what we will do.
After being found guilty at trial this spring, Dorsey is now starting a 35-year prison sentence.
We were able to take a very dangerous criminal off the street and hold him accountable for his actions.
Now, local and state officials have been really trying to get a handle on this issue of illegal sex work. And one of the proposals supported by the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office was a bill earlier this year in the legislature that would have increased the penalty for those who are buying sex work, the Johns in this case. But that bill did not make it out of committee this year. Reporting live in Seattle.
You hear that? They also working on a bill to come at the tricks, come at the buyers, come at the Johns, so they can receive more time. Y'all pay attention to what's going on out here. Stay on top of the laws in your area. Stay up on top of the federal laws. One of the worst things that you can say is, I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know they could do that. Well, you should know. International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard, at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the records and the dollars. And hey, we will see you on the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share the video.